Welcome, everybody. I'm really delighted that this evening I have Babycakes Romero with me, who has generously given me his time, and you, of course. So, welcome, Babycakes.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the backdrop, and when you stood up just a moment before we started recording, I noticed it says really cool backdrop on it.
It
It's a wonderful
does.
thing.
It does. A really bad joke. Yeah, I do a lot of Zoom calls, so everyone seems to have these blurred out backgrounds and things like that, and or sort of fancy visuals. So it just kind of, yeah, amused me.
Yeah, actually, humor is something that is a uniting factor for me in a lot of what I see of your work. Do you
Yeah.
want to just, before we move into images at all, if you were to sum up without something visual for our viewers to see, how would you describe what you do?
Yeah, that's always a tough question for me. I think, it's ultimately, my aim is I basically try and live as interesting life as possible and document it along the way. So for me, I live first, document second. So it's really about kind of just, what can I put myself into? What am I drawn towards? And my very simple premise is I just never leave home without my camera.
Mm. And
So whether I'm going to the corner shop or I'm going out for the day, it's always with me.
so I called the presentation this evening Street Seer. I very quickly checked with you that that would be okay because to me it does seem that you have an overview of street life, and that to me, in terms of having an overview more widely of your work as a visitor, that really the kind of the streets of London particularly are your key focus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like my domain, if you like, and it's cool. The ongoing series I have is called My London because it is exactly that. It's my London. It's my version of it. It's what I can see. It's what I encounter every day.
Mm.
I take a lot of photographs in my local neighborhood. So a lot of them are taken, within, minutes of my house, and so it's just, and I've just developed a huge catalog or a huge archive over the decades of a particular slice of life. But I'm drawn towards lots of random things, fleeting moments. My main aim is to try and capture what's going on in people's minds in the photos. That's not as in intention, but I always think if I always try and project into these other people's lives and imagine what's going on with them, and I think sometimes in a photograph you can just get a glimpse of something, and it's all projection at the end of the day, right? We can't tell what exactly is going on with these people, but it's quite fun trying.
Well, based on that, actually, and thinking about again this generosity of you giving me images to work with this evening, I love this image that you sent of you in childhood, and I'm wondering about you, your thoughts and feelings. I listened to a podcast you did several months ago with somebody, and you talked quite a lot, and you were pressed a lot actually on the letters that your uncle wrote to you and how that potentially was quite sort of formative for you, your art director uncle.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I was wondering about the boy and the boyishness of the photographs you take now. And actually, when you sent me this, I had this strange notion that it looks like a Baby Cakes Romero photograph.
That's actually pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, it's I wasn't. It was one of the first. I was trying to find a picture for you because I don't have a lot to hand of my childhood, but I found this, and actually, I was. It was like I was really into two-tone. I was like basically a rude boy, and I thought I looked very tough at the time. Obviously, I was like 10 years old, and obviously don't look tough at all. But I felt like it, So I had like the stay pressed trousers, the two-tone jacket, the Harrington, and sort of, it was. I felt like it was when I sort of came alive because for me, music's very important,
Mm.
and like the two-tone movement was like probably the first thing that I really got into. And I was a bit young for it, to be honest with you. But yeah, it definitely shaped me. So it felt like an appropriate picture.
Mm. And I wonder, its kind of legacy now, the music living in the visual, how somebody like you brings that into what you do as a street photographer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's like I have like day life and I have night life. And so I document both. So if I go out of an evening, if I go to a gig or a club or whatever it is I'm going to, I always take my camera. I also have a whole nother life as a DJ,
Mm.
and so I was out in nightlife environments all the time, and so I would document that as well. So I've always been, I've sort of always come alive at night, and so that was
Like your hero,
huh?
like a hero of yours.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Weegee I didn't know it at the time. And actually, when you asked me again, so what was my influences, I was given this book when I was really young. Not that I was not that much older than in that photograph, to be honest with you. It was given to me by not the uncle you mentioned, but another one. And I just looked at this book over and over and over, and I was just completely fascinated by the world that he showed. And actually, now when I was kind of picking out pictures of mine, I can see like there has been some influence. I mean, he also photographed a lot of dead bodies and a lot of crime scenes. And he also, yeah, like you say, he was very much alive at night. But I love his just sort of portrayal of everyday life, and he has this very sort of voyeuristic take on living, and I just yeah, I think it definitely probably shaped me at a sort of subconscious level.
I wonder, do you still have the book?
I do, yeah.
Is it Unknown Ouija by any chance?
That's a good question.
Because I think um
Is it over there? I don't think I've got it. It's actually in my other bookcase. I don't know what the title is, but it's all of his work. It's his crime stuff. It's the Hollywood stuff he did. It's like it's his whole. It's the whole thing. So
the
but I
reason why
always
I
go,
mentioned that book is because the image, which is faces in the crowd at the bottom,
yeah,
is considered to, I mean, obviously it's a well-known image, but it's also meant to be one of the sort of lesser known images by Weegee within his span of fame and life.
yeah, yeah.
But it's on the front cover, this image of that book. So I just wondered, as you'd picked it out, if it was something that had really stuck with you for some reason. And there's like a timeless quality, much as you're talking about your childhood photograph that you selected, and it's got
Yeah,
such a lot of reference to music culture and obviously the time in which you were growing up.
yeah,
The references are specific, but they also have a kind of universal appeal, don't they? And a universal quality, which is what I also see in Ouija's work.
yeah,
The stories of people who gather together at a movie premiere, which is the other name for Faces in the Crowd, actually. A
yeah,
movie premiere at the Palace Theatre, I think is the other title. And then obviously lovers at the movies. I mean, maybe the movies are dead, much as conversation is, but the fact that, when we get the chance, and hopefully not with someone with an infrared camera skulking
yeah,
like
yeah.
Ouija was, we are still snogging in the back seat somewhere. You
I
know,
would like to think so.
the one, yeah. Um, and then you gave me this one, which is a really iconic image.
Yeah,
It also has a really interesting music reference. Do you know what it is?
yeah, George Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used it for the cover of the album. I'm a big George Michael fan.
Yes.
And they begged him not to use it at the time. They said it was going to cause catastrophic sale losses, and it did, compared to the previous album. But he was adamant on using it, and it's an amazing picture. But I am really fascinated by crowd shots, and again, when I was picking out these shots,
Hmm.
I have, I have a lot of shots from Carnival, and I think I've supplied a couple,
Yep.
but it's all these sort of very densely packed crowd shots. Yeah, that's from. I actually don't know where that's from. That's from a club night somewhere. Do not know where that is.
I think one
Um,
of the main things for me in teaching particularly is that one of the things that I do is I will work with students to try and almost like reverse engineer their references, because very
yeah,
often we can't pinpoint where what we're doing comes from. I
yeah,
mean, you and I probably are sort of visually literate, so we've got a wide knowledge that's come from maybe decades in both our cases of studying
yeah,
what we do ourselves and also the work of other people, and having an awareness more broadly of contemporary culture and so on. And I don't mean that young people don't have an awareness of that, but they often don't have the ease to cite it the way we did, ironically, even though information is so much more available
yeah,
to them. Your work fascinates me because it pivots on all of these notions of contemporary life, I think. you know, it calls into question an idea of gathering and collective. It pushes its reference tentacles back in time to something that's lost, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I'm big on the dance floor as a community space, and obviously we are getting more disconnected as time goes on, and things like, COVID like completely separated everybody. And, I think, humanity is at its best when it's in a collective, dancing to the same beat and, feeling the same energy, and I've always found it my happy place. And so all I try and do with the photographs is is to capture that feeling of joy, that is just, and it's not a single experience, it's a unified experience.
hmm.
Um, I've actually got an exhibition I'm doing next year, and it's called Joy as an Act of Rebellion, and it's about featuring all these community dance floor community spaces, Notting Hill Carnival, Despacio, which is a sound system which I've documented since it started, which is where the guy's got his hands up in the air. That's that one, and just I don't know, it makes me feel like it gives me hope, right? And it kind of makes me feel like humanity can work. It just needs to be under the right circumstance.
Now, it's an interesting dichotomy in a way with being a photographer, because I wonder with photography about its activity in an active or a passive way. Like
Yeah,
the activity of the photographer to make photographs in so many ways is to be solitary, um,
yeah.
even if we're with others. And again, this is why I said the work's so fascinating, because there's always these funny um, interplays between, and this is your language, by the way. I've listened very carefully to some of the things you've said. Um, connection and disconnection, this idea of distance and proximity, closeness.
Hmm.
Your work is testing all of those things, but even though you're speaking to me now and I'm listening, I'm interested, and of course I believe what you're telling me, I'm also wondering about your awareness of being separate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what I try and do is not be separate. I'm not one of these detached photographers that steps back and observes. I'm taking it from within it, right? It's I mean, with the exception of the carnival pictures, when actually I'm taking them from my balcony,
Hmm.
so they're always they're an overhead, but I have been in amongst the throng, and so I'm always trying to be in the thick of it, like if I'm taking pictures at a gig, I'm in the mosh pit, like I always try and be as close to the action as possible. But it's a very subjective experience, photography, and for me, it's always my perspective. This is what I saw. This is how it felt to me, and I suppose I'm trying to capture the feeling more than I am the visual. It's just the visual comes with it.
Does that mean that a Babycakes Romero photograph is always ultimately about Babycakes Romero?
It's what I can see. It's what I'm living. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in a way,
There's no
but
criticism in that, by the way. Please don't
no,
take that as a sort of. I'm not being, I'm not being punchy in any way. I find this so interesting, and
yeah,
I want to know more about this from people who are really actually out in the field and doing this. I have a very, in one way, a closed world because I teach in a school. I've been in teaching in the same school for 21 years now. I've been there a
uh,
long time, and I work in a school that's on the edge of the New Forest, and it's in a lovely part of the world, but it's
mhm,
obviously not an urban setting,
mhm.
and it can feel quite disconnected from the energy that one might experience my home city or in your home city. Um, so you are in many ways doing the thing, obviously, that I'm talking about, and I'm trying
Uh,
to engage particularly young people in seeing beyond their own life as it might be now with possibility and potential. And I think when we look at photographs like your photographs, they're bursting with an energy that is also about potential that, obviously photographs are dead things, this is all in the past and so on and
Hmm.
so on. But I think they're very attractive, and they're attractive for particularly a younger audience who've grown up with phones and without that kind of togetherness. Um, it's been interesting. I've used your work this week in a set of seminars,
Right.
and the students ranging between 11 and 16 in that case have really been drawn particularly to Notting Hill Carnival images
Yeah.
and crowds because of their kind of sheer, I guess, scale,
Yeah.
um, the sense of collective, which is quite unusual. It's quite
Yeah. Yeah.
unusual.
I mean, I suppose like with especially with like the carnival shots, I'm trying to create a different narrative to the one that's being peddled in the mainstream media when it comes to showing what the Notting Hill Carnival, because the media only ever reports the incidences that were there, and they are like 0.005% of the activity. There's a million and a half people there over the space of 2 days, and they might have less than 100 instances, but that's what they focus on, right? And so the pictures are designed to show that everyone there, and they are from all walks of life, all together, and they're only of one purpose, and that's to have a good time, right? And that's what 99.9% of them are doing. And so I'm trying to show that because it's to counterbalance the way it's normally perceived and the way it's normally shown. But this is the real story. This is more factual because it represents the larger majority of the experience.
Hmm. Yeah. I wonder if there's also like a wistfulness. So you've talked before about not so much bygone era, but I suppose, yeah, bygone era where we weren't so obsessed with, especially our phones, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
Um, do you think that people coming together now has a different vibe to the way people came together even 10 years ago?
Yeah, 100%. And I do feel, that people's devices are getting in the way because so much of these large events, music events, whether it's the carnival or clubs or festivals, a lot of people are on their phones documenting it a lot of the time. And I know it's completely ridiculous for a photographer to have an issue with other people's documentation, but the fact of the matter, it is taking them out of the experience,
Hmm.
and so that they are slightly disconnected from it because they are filming it. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I suppose it's about balance, because if you can be there 80% of the time and you're taking pictures 20% of the time, and which is basically my ratio. I really try and live it much more than I document it, and I will let good moments go because I just feel that if I'm just documenting, what am I doing? Like really, when I get to my deathbed, I'm not going to go, I wish I'd taken more pictures. I wish I'd lived more, right? And so that's really always my drive. But it is finding that balance is the truth.
I hope it's okay for me to mention now, but I mean, anyone searching for you on YouTube, for example, will come across an interview you did, again, relatively recently, about your struggle with long COVID.
Yeah,
Um, I thought it was so poignant, thinking of you with the double whammy of COVID coming along and affecting everybody, but then very specifically, it's affecting you in a way that meant you were separate and not in that throng anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Are you, how would you tell us about your re entry into the world of crowds, collectives, and
Yeah.
messaging?
I mean, I spent a lot of time over the last 5 years in isolation because I couldn't go out. I couldn't even leave the house. I was housebound. And so I was cut off from everything that I normally did and normally saw, and the things that mattered to me, which was being with people and being connected through music, and all that got kind of taken away. And as I started to recover, my only real mission was to get back into that experience and not be afraid to go back into it, and not, and so I sort of, part of my return to health was about putting myself back in those situations. And I started small, and we have a local reggae night, which is just around the corner to our flat. And I went there for the first time, and it was my first outing out for years. And I was there for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and it was all weird and difficult. And then I went back again and again, and it just got easier and easier. And but I felt so happy and so grateful to be back in that experience. It overrid any feelings I had of unease or discomfort, So I always lent on that gratitude of being back in those environments. And in the last year, I've gone to, multiple music festivals and, Dance Till Dawn. And I went to Glastonbury, which I thought I would never be able to get back to, And so it was just, I don't know, it just felt incredible because I never literally thought I would ever get back to these things again. So, yeah.
So would you say that, um, all these moments of suffering in our life are usually described as great teachers? That's the sage way to sort of think about them.
It is,
What
yeah.
what has it taught you about photographs?
Yeah, I mean, it's they say illness can be a teacher if you let it, right? And as hard as it was the last few years, I take away more than I lost. I learned more about myself, about life, about what mattered. Um, but in terms of photography, even when I was chronically ill and I could just get to the end of the road, um, I still took my camera out with me and I still looked for photographs. Like it never left me. And I didn't know that was going to be my experience. And I have a whole collection of photographs, which I'm hopefully going to, put into a book, which is basically called 1500 Steps, because for a very long time, that was as far as I could get from my flat. And so everything was taken within that space.
Mm.
And I'm very lucky. We live very close to Portobello Road, and which is teeming with life. So but I
I
can,
love I love what you said about Portobello Road is like watching a coral reef. And you mentioned that you've been looking at a live cam of the Honduran coral reef.
the jellyfish.
And it seemed to me again this idea of like, collective, we're all one, aren't we?
Yes.
There's also, though, I mean, you can correct me, but I haven't seen anything yet in your work that's directly about, for example, um, landscape, let's say, or
Yeah.
something like that. But I just thought, isn't it funny because actually your work in lots of ways is metaphorical of climate crisis, of like all these other things that kind of dovetail in or move together as one.
Yeah. I mean, I do shoot landscapes. I just don't necessarily share them. So I actually put up a photograph today on my blog from Yosemite National Park, and that's a very rare occasion when I would actually put up a landscape picture. But I'm doing a series on my trip to California, and just so it's not that I don't find it engaging as a photographer, but it's not really the drive of what I want to do. My drive is to show people's lives and how they interact with each other and how we all go through our day with these kind of, everything that's going on and still manage to get up and go to the shops and do all these things when there's obviously a lot of other stuff going on which maybe we should be paying attention to.
Well, I was thinking though more, I mean, I suppose where I'm going with this is that, you almost exclusively photograph people in urban environments.
Yeah.
Is that because the urban environment is really the only place where we can find collective, easily
yeah. I
for
mean,
humans?
yeah. I mean, I call London like an ant colony. You know, I like living amongst vast amounts of people. I don't find it stressful. I find it comforting when I'm, in large crowd settings, whether it's, something like the picture you can just see, or whether I'm just, walking down Oxford Street and it's absolutely teeming with life. I just love the energy and the buzz, and it's never boring. And this is the thing about London is that I go outside my door and I always see something interesting, like these characters here. It's
Well, it's good that you mentioned boredom. It's almost like it's a dream come true interviewing you. Honestly, it's so good because lots of stuff that I've written down is what you're talking about just naturally. But also, I have written down here, and I don't know why I zigzag underlined it. I said he has an interesting fear of boredom.
It's not ever fear of boredom. I just like a lot of stimulation. I can handle vast amounts of stimulation, and I was very deprived over the last few years, and and I learned to cope with it. It wasn't like I couldn't, and I had vast periods of boredom as well, and I learned to be okay with that. But for me, it's like we're all exuding energy, right? There's a lot of energy coming off everybody. So the more people you're surrounded by, the more energy there is in the space around you. And I find it's sort of electrifying.
Hmm. When you lose a connection to someone, can you see it?
When I have a connection with someone, do you mean?
No, I mean when you lose a connection to someone. So I'm thinking more when you're photographing strangers.
Yeah.
Um, it seems to me, and again, please tell me if this isn't the case, that you do interact with the strangers you photograph at least a little, because in part you're photographing them, and there has to maybe be some kind of preamble or afterwards, there must be something. I'm interested about walking away from those people and the loss of connection. If
Yeah.
can
There
you
is
see
no
it?
interaction.
None, okay.
No, ever. Yeah, no, I tell you what it is it can't be beforehand because once they're aware, you'll lose that moment.
Mm,
I don't want people to be aware because I'm interested in how people are when they don't realize, that to me is what's, really fascinating. So it's not really possible and then to get the work that I want. Um, I would love to have conversations with these people. I mean, actually, in my local area, I develop relationships
mm,
with a lot of the people that I do photograph, but almost separately to that, and even if I knew them, I still wouldn't tell them if I was taking a picture because again, I would lose that moment, So I still feel I'm drawn towards them. There's a connection has happened,
mm.
but it's not a verbal one. I suppose that's
Well,
the way to look at it.
I mean, I looked at, is it Jamma Elmi with
Yeah, yeah. Here
the
I do know, yeah.
and but also Sister Ruth was another one.
Yeah, yeah, and these are all local characters who I have got to know. I mean, bless her, Sister Ruth, she never remembers me. So we've spoken 100 times, and every time's the first time because she hasn't got any memory. And but I still feel there's a connection there, do you know? And so, yeah, I suppose because I've patrolled this area for so long, I have got to know a lot of the people in my pictures. That's true. Yeah, it really is. But that's not necessarily the intention. It feels separate somehow.
But does that mean that you're then passive in making these images?
Well, I can't be passive because I'm taking them. It is a proactive act, but
Mhm.
there's nothing of me in there. No,
Can you separate?
other than when they catch me taking them, because I have a lot of pictures when they're actually like this guy here, this person here is looking straight down the barrel of the lens.
Yeah,
So so we've had a moment, but I take photographs from the hip.
yeah.
So we are connecting eye to eye. There's no camera in the way,
Hmm.
but the camera is taking the picture, So I don't know.
I mean, it's a useful technique, isn't it, to make sure it's not about subterfuge. That sounds very negative, but
Yeah,
to maintain, as you say, the sense of person to person
yeah,
rather
yeah,
than person to machine.
yeah. I mean,
Also,
it is subterfuge to a degree because, but I question a lot whether I should be doing this. I've questioned it my whole life, ever since I've started. But I feel compelled to document, and with it, every now and again, I might wrestle with the fact whether I should be doing it or not. But the ultimate aim is just to show the life that we're leading. It's not. I have no other ulterior motive.
well, this is my other question, though, is that I wonder if you can separate your politics from your photographs.
I mean, I feel like my politics seeps into my work. Certainly like all the stuff I did with the environment and stuff, if that's even a political thing, which I don't think it is. I think it's beyond politics. But anyway, that's another conversation. So, and I've also tried to show the inequality in London, and I've also tried to show that multiculturalism does work, and London is the living proof. So I suppose inadvertently or overtly, I have been political in my pictures. It's just, maybe not necessarily always that obvious.
I was earlier today, one of my former students came in to give a talk to my sixth form class.
Yeah.
And my colleague and I, who are both the art and design teachers at school, taught him like 19 years ago now or something. So he's now proper grown up and he's a living photographer who's out, like you in the field doing things. And I
Yeah.
asked him about, the separation of his politics from his photographs, which is really hard for him because he's a journalist and he embeds himself usually in communities to try and, for himself, I guess, disprove like his political bias or to see for himself if there's something in his own politics that means he doesn't truly understand, let's say, a particular community. He's been in Essex a lot, in Nigel Farage's constituency,
Right, right, right.
living in a
Yeah.
van, documenting the people who live there. I can't remember the name of the place,
Right.
Jowick or something like that, and he's called it
Yeah.
Jowick Happy Club,
Yeah.
because this place is the most deprived place statistically in the whole of England. There's
Right,
lots of
right.
really negative stuff about it on YouTube, for
Hmm.
example. There's a lot of correlation, I think, looking at your work and thinking about what one might quickly stereotype as a place that's urban and therefore immediately has some kind of issue. But a lot of the time, I simply see a recording of life, warts and all, but also joy in life, joy in
Yeah.
just sort of being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I don't think it's so. I mean, certainly, I'm not trying to paint a negative picture of anything. I'm
no.
not really, I'm just trying to show what I can see, and obviously we're drawn towards different things. But, I'm very unjudgmental when it comes to my subject matters. Do you know what I mean? I'm never trying to expose anyone. Everything I'm drawn towards is because I think they look amazing. Like the woman on the sofa there. I just thought she looked incredible. You know what I mean? It was just this incredible random moment. I don't even know where that sofa came from, but so it's I just want to show everything as it is in as much objectivity as I can, based on the fact that I'm doing something completely subjective,
Mm.
right? If that if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things I've noticed in your photographs on your blog are kind of a celebration of the everyday absurd, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I'm looking for that. I mean, I'm not looking for them because I'm also trying to just live. But obviously, what catches my eye are these, beautiful, random, quirky little, moments in life, that you can only get if you're always walking around with a camera.
Mm. I mean, you're multi-talented, is it? Your screenplays, your writings, your animation, all these fingers and lots of different pies. Would you say they all have the same underpinning ideology?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still, yeah, doing a lot of different things. I'm driven by ideas. Really, if I was to be honest, is that ideas buzz around in my head, and the only way to get the buzzing out is by making them. So and obviously I can't get all the buzzing out of my head because there's too much going on in there. But but everyone I get past the post is a moment of, happiness for me. So it's really kind of just, again, I'm driven by what I see, and what inspires me, I guess.
Mm. You did say something that I found challenging actually, which is when you were talking about drawing actually, and you were
Yeah.
saying that naturally you're good at drawing. You have those skills. And your interviewer, the other interviewer, was kind of trying to ask you whether somebody made you that way or if that was just all you.
Yeah.
And you were quite reactionary about that actually. You said that no, nobody created this. This is me. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about whether you think that a photographer can be trained.
Okay, that's a good question. Um, I am completely untrained. I have an appalling, and I'll be going to be, full confession here, I have an appalling lack of technical knowledge when it comes to photography. And I always thought it was a problem, but over time, I actually see it's been a bonus
Mm.
because I have done workarounds that maybe no one else would have done, and it ended up creating a style. That it gave me a photographic identity, through a lack of knowledge. And so I have learned to embrace it over the years, and I'm very minimal with my equipment in terms of what I use. I'm very practical. All I do is make sure I've got a camera that can fit in my pocket, and I've used the same camera or versions of for decades. I've never changed it. I don't really have any interest in equipment. I don't really understand it.
I'm the same. I actually, I have this argument. I have a weekly show with a photographer in the States called Bill Wadman, and he is such a tech nerd. He won't mind me saying it, and he's a total camera buff. Like you could talk to him about any kind of technical stuff, any kind of camera. I mean, he's a very fine artist, but he's
Yeah.
also a commercial photographer. He's also a portrait photographer who knows his stuff technically. And though I'm a teacher of photography, a teacher of art and design, my technical knowledge is limited. And that was true when I did my photography degree as well. Because the thing I cared more about was feeling my way into spaces.
Yeah, I get it.
Um, I mean, the work I make is very different to what you do, but nonetheless, that's a shared sentiment, I think.
Yeah.
Although I, I have a problem as an educator, um, that label, educator at least,
Hmm.
saying that a person can't be trained. I think we can develop awareness. I think I can, not I, but anyone who is in the role of teacher facilitates the development of someone,
Yeah.
can assist in the enabling of them to help them become this thing, whatever it might be. I just thought it was a really quite a stark thing to say. There was a sort of sense of almost like divine intervention in it.
Well, because I mean, yeah, I mean, probably with the drawing more because I'll be honest with you, like the drawing is, it just, I have no idea what's going to happen. I just put my pen on the paper and something happens. So it feels like it just comes from somewhere else. Like I said, that's why I say that, I don't feel like it comes from inside my imagination, but I don't know how it gets onto the paper.
Hmm.
Yeah, with photography, obviously you're a bit more reactive. So you're not building things from scratch. So, but you can definitely, I have learned a lot along the way,
Well, I was going
but
to say, I mean, even somebody who knows what to reference, as we started with at the beginning, we were talking about, we can look into our repertoire of knowledge, can't we? And sometimes that knowledge is almost dormant. We might not be conscious of it.
that's right.
Um,
It's all happening under the hood. I mean, actually, like apart from like Weegee, I deliberately avoided looking at a lot of photography, in all honesty, because I didn't want it to shape what I did.
why?
So why?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be something uh, myself. I wanted to be something. I didn't want to be influenced by someone else. I just wanted something to come out naturally. And I feared if I looked at too much photography that it would change the stuff that I did. And so I developed my style first. And then when I felt like it was solid, then I started looking at stuff because I didn't feel that I could be as influenced as easily. So, I did make a deliberate attempt to do that.
It's curious to me to think of not wanting to be influenced because it seems to be the most natural thing in the world to accept the influence of all our conditions and our experiences.
Yeah, I wanted to be influenced by life rather than art. And so yeah, I used the life as a source material rather than kind of seeing someone's work and go, oh, that's really cool. I'd like to be able to do that,
Mm.
But it's not like I lived in a bubble. Obviously, I was aware. I went to exhibitions. It wasn't like I
Yeah.
ignored everything. And you're right, it probably all went in at some subconscious level. No one is completely original. No one is pure. We are a product of our lives and our environment. So it's difficult to know where you start and when other things end, right? And it doesn't really matter, does it? We're all a hodgepodge of everything we've ever lived and everything we've ever seen.
Hmm. I was thinking about a phrase you used. I don't know if it was something I've heard you say or I've read somewhere, but you said something about mirroring largely unspoken feeling. You were talking about your own photographs.
Yeah.
Mm, when you make photographs now, what is the unspoken feeling you think is the essence of what you capture?
It's another good question. What am I trying to catch? What is the unspoken feeling? I mean, I'll be honest with you, like especially like with the street stuff, I think people are holding down a lot, right? And not necessarily sharing it. And I wrote a piece about this recently about, that and this is why I think I photograph is because I think every now and again in a picture you can actually see that there's more going on underneath, and it's when people don't realize they're being observed that you can actually see that they're thinking about a lot because everyone thinks that they're the only one with a busy brain. But
Mm.
I know for a fact, from looking at people, that everyone is thinking about a multitude of different things all the time. So I suppose can we have a shared experience with this experience was actually in isolation because obviously we live in our heads most of the time, right? 90% of our existence is inside our own imagination, inside our minds. So, if we can all agree that that's happening to everybody, maybe that'll connect us so we won't be in our heads as much and we can actually share that experience. But that's the hard bit, right? Even with people we know and care about, we don't always share what's going on the inside, and that's why I think with photography, I can see it like with that guy on the steps. I can't say exactly what's going on, but I know something's going on, right?
Well, I find it interesting now that again, it's that you are such a dream to interview, I have to say, because I can say then, and sort of following on from your thoughts, that the image that I'm looking at more is the one at the bottom where scrolled on the wall is maybe there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, I know. That's my favorite bit of graffiti.
Did you write that? Come on, own up.
I I did not. I did not. I've just put together
I
a
did
book.
cross-reference the font, by the way. There's another one that I saw of yours, and I thought, I wonder if he's at it round, Notting Hill, Portobello Road.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have done graffiti in the past, but no, none of the ones in my pictures are me. No, that feels wrong somehow. I'm a documentarian, but I love finding things like that. And it's really it's such a simple statement,
But
but
isn't this what, when I was speaking about essence in your work, I wonder, I'm obviously not telling you what your work is about, but, my perspective on it is that perhaps your work is communication in itself, of course, but it's a direct communication about communication, isn't it?
right,
Every single layer in your work to me is about communicating. This kind of instant assimilation of almost like the collective experience, collective thought, the communication, unspoken or otherwise, between us, an exchange with the glance or the graffiti on the wall or the messages scrawled on the on the post, or what we
yeah,
perceive again through our conditions and our experience, our bias, all that stuff, how we read the unspoken communication of the people because of their expressions or their actions, that louche cigarette, that um, knowing the child looks, knowing the the stain, all of it is like a collision all at once of communication about communication.
yeah, oh yeah, or even maybe it's actually just the communication is a lack of communication about the things that we're trying to communicate, or it's yeah, I suppose it's the gap between what we think and what we say, and I suppose that's probably what interests me the most.
Well, that's why, initially I came to your work because of your Death of Conversation
Yeah,
series.
yeah,
And I mean, I spend all my time really in conversation. Um, it's the the life blood
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, I forgot to include a picture of Death and Conversation. It is obviously probably my most famous series by a landslide, but
No, but I thought it's actually quite interesting that we've gone all the way through our interview and we're at the end now and we haven't talked about it. But I wanted to mention it because if anybody hasn't seen your work before, I would like to direct them to that series because really I think all the way through that we haven't mentioned it until now. It's almost like an oblique reference everywhere.
yeah.
It is that, there's a need for us to commune.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm,
And, and this is coming from someone that actually, because I did spend a lot of time in isolation recently, how vital it is to our existence, how fundamental it is. And they talk about the isolation epidemic at the
mm,
moment. And, that's because people are, locked on their phones, amongst other things, but they're just, the shared spaces are diminishing. And I suppose that's why I'm really drawn towards dance floor spaces because that's the one shared space that is still alive and well, right? And a lot of the others, things like pub life has deteriorated,
mm.
youth clubs, all these places where people got together, they now don't anymore. I suppose sports, but I've never really been to sports. But so I think any time that we can actually reverse this trend of separation and bring ourselves together is ultimately what we need because we're mammals, right? We're social beings. We need to be together to be happy.
Well, I was also thinking though, not just because of our needs to be social, but also, again, you were prescient when you did your TEDx talk.
Yeah,
Somewhere in that, you talked about the loss of skills that we as humans have relied on for many years. We're not
yeah,
exercising those muscles.
yeah,
I mean, that was prescient because that's over 10 years ago now.
yeah,
And I think, again, from a teaching perspective, I'm looking at young people who are turning in essays to me that they haven't written.
yeah,
I'm speaking to people who are obsessed with regurgitation
yeah.
at best, but at worst, there is a complete abdication of thinking.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's that they've lost the ability to disseminate information. So they just take everything at face value. They aren't able to actually separate what's real from what's not because it's all coming in one, huge feed. And obviously, yeah, you mentioned about obviously now we've outsourced all our writing skills to ChatGPT. That little part of our brain is just going to get smaller and smaller. And so, where does it all end? I don't know.
Well,
It's
we are at the last slide, so it is going to end here. But
okay. Well, there you go.
no, no, hang
What a
on. One
perfect
more,
segue.
one more thing though, and it has been perfect, by the way. Thank you so much. But I put this one at the end because to me, there's something, well, obviously highly interpretable, very subjective, but it did make me think about ascension, how we rise up.
Uh-huh.
And I wondered, from the perspective of Babycakes Romero, after the death of our conversation, after the loss of our collective nature or spaces or our willingness to be available to each other in that way, can you see that there is a movement that's not backwards, but that is moving us again together?
Yes, 100%. I document one of the pictures earlier, and it's the Despacio sound system, and that is the perfect example of people that want to be together, that have actually it creates this unified experience, and people are chasing that, yeah, and they're not getting it elsewhere. But there is a very strong movement for people that want to dance together. They don't want to face the front, just face the DJ. They hide away the DJs, so basically you can't see where the DJs are. So people have to dance with each other, right? And so I think there's a very strong movement going back that way, and it's you can't eradicate real life, no matter how much digital life dominates.
Mm.
Real life is always going to win, or I would like to think so. And I think there's already a backlash, and I think kids that have grown up with the digital existence are craving something more. And, and I think like Generation Z are out more than the millennials before them. So I think there is already a shift.
Yeah. My goodness, it's been so interesting speaking to you. I'm really grateful for you giving me all this time and letting
Oh,
me
thank you. Thank you for having
scrutinize
me. It's been a pleasure.
scrutinize everything that you do. I hope it wasn't too obscure, but I have very much enjoyed speaking to you.
Me
And
too.
thank you very much.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome.
Thank you.